do this. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you're having a nice week. It is Thursday. The Big Ten tournament started up last night. Indiana playing Oregon coming up here in about 2 hours. I'm going to get you ready for that game. Purdue plays USC tonight. The Colts made a couple signings last night. It's great. We have things to talk about today. And Luke Brennaman, he's going to do that coming up here in about 20 minutes. IU student reporter. He's going to come on the show at 10:20, and we're going to, continue to talk about this Indiana and Purdue basketball game, which is, happening tonight. Okay, Indiana lost to Oregon about a week ago, right? They lost 73-64, and there were two big storylines coming out of that game. The first one was the free throw discrepancy. It was rather large. Oregon took 21 free throws to Indiana's 7. Both teams really got the ball in the lane a lot, attacking the rim, trying to finish there. Indiana just didn't get as many calls as Oregon did. And I don't think that's the craziest thing ever, just because when you're the home team, I think home cooking is a real thing when it comes to officials, especially in college basketball, where the officials aren't always great. It was so bad, actually, that the usually, phlegmatic Mike Woodson got a little fired up after the game. Here's Mike Woodson last week talking about the officiating after that game against Oregon, in which Indiana lost by 9.
I mean, we had our chances, but listen, guys, in a physical game like this, it can't be 21-7. You gotta be kidding me. 21-7 on free throws. It's bull. It just can't be not in a physical game. They're a physical team, and it can't be that lopsided. It's impossible.
Did you think that was mostly with Ballo and Renew inside, or?
No, I'm just saying it can't be 21-7.
What was the ref's message to you?
Well, again, it's what it is. I can't go back and get it. But in a physical game like that, where both teams are battling their asses off, you can't punish one team and put one team at the line for 21 times and another team only get there 7 times. That's all.
Awful, says Mike Woodson, head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers. They're rematching Oregon today, and that was a big part of that game, which happened about a week ago. Okay, Indiana got beat up, and they didn't get rewarded for going to the rim, which is usually what happens. And because of that, because the game was so recent, I don't expect for Oregon to shoot 14 more free throws than Indiana does today. Okay, I don't expect it to be 21-7 again, because the game was literally last week. You know that the Big Ten and these officials remember Mike Woodson after the game going crazy. I'm sure they did the thing where they send in a whole bunch of clips and they say, "See, we got fouled a lot and you didn't call it." And given how recent that game was and how upset Mike Woodson was after the fact, I don't think that, the free throw discrepancy will be as lopsided as it was in that game. Honestly, if I'm Indiana, I'm going to the rim early a ton, because I do think that early in the game, not through the entire game, but I do think early Indiana will get a friendlier whistle than Oregon because of what happened in Eugene last week. Now, despite Oregon taking 14 more free throws than Indiana, that is not why Indiana lost that game. Indiana lost to Oregon last week because Nate Biddle is a good player. Nate Biddle, the center for Oregon, was dominant on the defensive end. He protected the rim at an elite level. He had 4 blocks, and he showed why he finished second in the Big Ten in blocks per game at 2.2 blocks per game, only behind the big athletic kid from Penn State. Indiana couldn't score on the inside. And I don't know how much you've watched Indiana this year, but when they aren't scoring on the interior, they're not good. And Nate Biddle completely took that away from them. Indiana only scored 32 points in the paint. It's not good. It's not. They shot 14 of 34 inside the lane. That's not very good either. Shooting 41% from inside the lane is a terrible number. And it happened to Indiana because Nate Biddle is a good interior defender. He protected the rim really well in that game. Okay, he had 4 of Oregon's 7 blocks, and he impacted every shot. It's why Malik Reneau was so bad. Malik Reneau was bad in that game against Oregon. He wasn't the only one. We'll get to the others here in a moment, but I do want to focus on Malik Reneau because he is the second leading scorer for this Indiana team. And when Omar Ballo goes off the floor, Indiana wants to play through Malik Reneau. He can't be 4 for 12 again like he was last week against Oregon. He can't only score 8 points. Can't happen. And if he comes out early, and it's once again evident, like it was last week in that game in Eugene, that he really struggles with the size of Nate Biddle, he shouldn't play 27 minutes again. Now, if he comes out, and in his first 3 minutes, he's getting buckets and he looks good, then go ahead, play him 30, whatever. Don't care. But if it is as blatant as it was last week, that Malik Reneau is going to struggle trying to score on Nate Biddle, then give Omar Ballo more minutes. Because Omar Ballo in that game last week was really good. He was awesome. He was the best big man in that game. He was 5 of 7 from the floor. The fact that he only got 7 shots is ridiculous. And he scored 10 points and had 12 rebounds. He was one of 2 players for Indiana that got into double figures in that game, and he only took 7 shots. And the reason why he had more success than Malik Reneau is because he's just bigger. He's actually Biddle's size. Like, Malik Reneau is a small center. He's like 6'9". Okay, so play Ballo, more minutes. I think he should be the main big on the floor in this game. Like, I would match minutes with Nate Biddle. That, like, if I was Mike Woodson, I think I'd match their minutes because not only defensively or offensively does Omar Ballo have more success than Malik Reneau, but it's a defensive thing as well. Nate Biddle went for 37 against Washington the other night. The dude can score. He's actually Oregon's leading scorer on the season. And putting that bigger body on him like Omar Ballo is, lean on him a little bit, wear him down a little bit faster. Omar Ballo also rebounded really well in that game last week, 12 rebounds. So I would play Ballo more in this game if I was Mike Woodson than Malik Reneau. Okay, so because, Biddle's size just isn't as impactful on Ballo because he's just a really big dude, and Malik Reneau isn't. It's a matchup thing. So I will be intrigued to see how Malik Reneau plays today. I'm going to be interested to see how Mike Woodson kind of splits up those minutes between those 2 players. Because if Malik Reneau comes out and it's evident early that he's going to struggle again dealing with Nate Biddle, then get him out. Let's play Omar Ballo a little bit more than we normally would. Now, to be fair to Malik Reneau, because I don't want to sound like I'm just piling on one guy, Malik Reneau wasn't the only guy for Indiana that struggled last week against Oregon on the offensive end. Miles Rice, a guy who's been playing really well. I feel like I've been very complimentary of him as of late. He was 1 of 7 from the floor. It's not very good. Mackenzie Mbako, your Big Ten freshman of the year last year, 2 of 10 from the floor. It's not very good. Luke Goody, 2 of 6 from the floor. Those 3 guys cannot combine to be 5 of 23 from the floor. That cannot happen. Like, you have to get a little more from Mackenzie Mbako, Malik Reneau, and Miles Rice than that. 5 of 23. That is that's abysmal. That's bad. Okay, those players have to step up as well. Same thing with Malik Reneau. Defensively, I thought they played fine against Oregon last week. Okay, now they obviously have to defend without fouling a lot better than what they did. Okay, if they clean that up, then they should be fine. Okay, they'll have to defend the 3 today as well as they did last week. They held Oregon to only 24% shooting from 3. Really, their entire defense was really good. Oregon only shot 39% from the floor. This is just it was a very good defensive effort from Indiana, something that we've seen from them more and more here as of late. The thing is, they just didn't score enough. And so that's the question today. Can they score enough points? Because Indiana, they can clearly beat Oregon. I know that they lost by 9 on the road, but the game was much closer than what that final score it indicates. Okay, and this is almost a home game for Indiana. The crowd should be pro-Indiana. They should win this game. They should. They're just as, if not more talented than Oregon. They're only 2.5-point underdogs. This is essentially a home game. That line's down to 1.5, by the way, the last time that I checked. And they could have won in Oregon if I'm blanking on his name. If that guard doesn't knock down a 30-foot three-pointer, then Indiana probably wins that game. But, a good player made a tough shot. Sometimes that happens. Okay. So for Indiana today, I do think they'll win. I think they'll get a little bit more scoring from their guards. Like I don't expect for Miles Rice, Mackenzie Mbako, and Luke Goody to be 5 of 23 shooting again. Like that, I would be very surprised if that happens. So I think they'll get a little more production from their non-bigs. I expect for Malik Renew to kind of figure it out because he is a good player. And when you play someone a second time, you pick up on more tendencies. You kind of know what you can and can't do. So I expect him to be a little bit better. Omar Ballo, I expect to continue to be Omar Ballo. Trey Galloway was the only Indiana player last week in that Oregon game that was consistent offensively. He had 16 points on 7 of 14 shooting. Everyone else for Indiana has to pick up the offensive slack, and I think that they will. And I think that they'll probably punch their ticket to the NCAA tournament by winning this game today. That's what I expect. 1.5-point underdogs. I'm actually going to double check that line because I'm sure that it's moved again since I checked last night. So very intrigued to kind of see how that goes. While I'm talking and bringing up, my sportsbook of choice, bet Purdue minus 9.5 today. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later on in the show, a little bit more in depth. USC played a double overtime game last night. Double overtime. And they're turned around and they're having to play today. There's obviously no such thing as a sure thing. Those people in Vegas very much do know what they are doing. But yeah, that line is still 9.5. Purdue minus 9.5 feels like it's probably going to cash. So if I was you, if you want to make a little money, that is the bet that I would take today. That Indiana and Oregon line has it moved? It moved back up. So Indiana is back down to a 2.5-point underdog plus 120 if you just want to take them on the money line. So that's the way I would bet. Indiana's talented. They are playing better. Are they perfect? No. They're obviously not. They need to continue to shoot the basketball well because that's something else that they've done better here as of late. Like they've made more threes. It's amazing. That 3-point shot is quite critical when it comes to winning basketball games. They've shot it better. They shot it well last week against Oregon on the road, 36%. If they can do that again, they can just get a little more consistency out of Miles Rice and Mackenzie Mbako. Speaking of Mackenzie Mbako, he's just disappeared since that loss on the road at Purdue where he played really, really well. Like he's going to have to show up again at some point if Indiana wants to make a run in this tournament and if they want to make a run in the NCAA tournament. Because like that dude is too talented to only be playing like 18 minutes. Like he is like that. Like he's a guy who should play like 30 minutes a night and he should score 15 easy. 6'8", can shoot it, can put it on the deck. He's a tough shot maker too. The number of times where he'll catch the ball with like 4 seconds left on the shot clock, take like one dribble and then fade away and knock it down is kind of crazy. Not kind of crazy. It is crazy. So hopefully he kind of gets it going today. Hopefully Malik Renew bounces back after that rough game against Oregon last week. And hopefully Indiana punches their ticket to the NCAA tournament. Coming up here in about 6 minutes, Luke Brennaman, IU student reporter. He's going to join the show to continue talking Indiana versus Oregon. Coming up later on in the show, I'll probably talk Purdue, USC just a little bit, something beyond, I like Purdue minus 9.5. The Colts have made a couple extra signings. We're going to get into those. And then new segment, I don't think I've done this before. We're going to do a little most likely to, least likely to Indianapolis Colts edition. It is the offseason. We're looking forward. We're ready for, I don't know about you. I'm ready for the draft. I'm ready for training camp. I'm ready to see what this new look Indianapolis Colts defense looks like. But obviously, you need a little more than just a good defense. So we're going to get into all that a little bit later. But when we come back here in about 4 minutes, Luke Brennaman is going to join the show, and we're going to continue talking Indiana versus Oregon.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you've had a nice week. Indiana getting set to play Oregon here in about an hour and 45 minutes, joined by Luke Brennaman, IU student reporter, also co-host of the Dialed In podcast over on Chatterbox Sports. He joins to talk Indiana IU. Luke, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm great. How are you? I mean, I think it's one of the best sports weeks of the year from a fan perspective, especially a student. There's nothing better than turning these games on. I mean, we're about to get a Big Ten basketball game that maybe some would argue, but I call this, a very much a high-level game. Both of these teams right now projected to be in the tournament has a lot of implications for that, and you're getting that at noon. So I love this week. I'm doing well. And how about this weather, man? It's hard to beat. Dude,
it's so good. I'm torn, Luke. I want to go play golf today, but there's also basketball on all day, And so it's just kind of like, I can play golf all summer. I'm probably just going to stay home, sit in the nice little groove of my couch and watch hoops. It's going to be great. What do you think? What adjustments do you think we're going to see from Indiana? Because they played Oregon a week ago. What changes do you think we see from them today?
Well, the name of the game that jumps out from a player perspective is Nate Biddle. Their center is playing the best basketball of his career, arguably playing as the best center in the Big Ten right now. He's coming off a 30-plus point performance in his last game against Washington. This is a rematch, though, and true basketball knowers know just how difficult it is to beat a team twice, especially in the span of a couple weeks. I think for Indiana, the biggest thing that jumps out at me is you need to perform better. Your superstars need to score more. You need to execute. This was an Indiana team that scored a total of 8 points in the final 8 minutes of that basketball game, and they shut down. I mean, we lost by 9, and Oregon finished the game on a 10-1 run. That's the difference right there. So I think the execution with Indiana defensively, they held Oregon 6 to 7% under their normal field goal percentage. I thought they played them tough. Yes, Biddle got 14. He was dominant on the glass. But outside of pinpointing defensive rebounds, because Indiana did get beat up on the offensive glass, I thought Indiana played with Oregon for all 38 minutes of that game. Just the most crucial minute and a half is when they blew it. So a lot of the same, hang in there, get them down to the wire. And I think that Gainbridge home crowd, and if you just make a couple shots down the stretch, Indiana has a really good shot today.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like you said, they played with them for a full 38 minutes. I would argue they played better than Oregon. If I think Shawthorne, something like that. He hits that 30-footer with the shot clock running down, and if that shot isn't made, I think Indiana probably wins that game. I am glad that you brought up Nate Biddle because, like you said, he's playing really good right now. He finished second in the Big Ten in blocks per game this year. Last week coming out of that game, and I'd like your thoughts on this, I thought that Mike Woodson made a mistake. I thought he should have played Malik Reneau less than what he did. I thought Reneau really struggled trying to score on Nate Biddle, whereas I thought Omar Ballo was fine because Omar Ballo's bigger than Biddle, whereas Reneau's smaller. I would like to see Ballo play 35 minutes today and Malik Reneau play closer to 20. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point. When you look at Biddle, that guy's just a unit on the inside. So the first thing that jumped out to me was Umar Ballo can bang, but Nate Biddle can bang too. So these guys are going to be beat up. It's going to be all about who gets into that early foul trouble. I think the bigs in today's game is a game within the game, and it's going to be a minute-by-minute type of thing. I think Ballo's going to get tired. Let's be honest, it's kind of ridiculous all season long from the approach of what they asked Umar Ballo to do on a play-by-play perspective of running, a total of 100 feet per play, just up into the lane, up to the three-point line, up to the volleyball line to set these high screens. I personally don't think that that's why they should have brought him here to do stuff like that. He's more of an offensive rebounder, get position, get the ball to. But Umar Ballo's got to play big today, and especially with the two-man game with Reneau, people always discredit when they're on the floor at the same time. If they're going to be on the floor at the same time, that's not up to us. We can scrutinize it. We can say what they want, but they still need to be productive. There's no excuse there. That's not 100% on a coach. And if you have two big, the best thing you can do is play that high-low game. So I'm really expecting better passing, more confidence out of them. I felt like one of the two, when they were playing together at Oregon, they would draw a double and the pass would be late. The pass would be hesitant. It'd be a bounce pass instead of an alley-oop. They need to play better together today. And if they do, I think Oregon's going to have trouble because, yes, they have a big, but Indiana has two.
Joined by Luke Brennaman, IU student reporter and co-host of the Dialed In podcast over for Chatterbox Sports, talking Indiana and Oregon. The interesting thing about the Renew and Ballo minutes against Oregon, which I hated because like they would put Ballo out on the perimeter for some reason. And Nate Biddle would be like, that's fine. And he would just stand right at the bucket, and then they'd post up Renew, and he'd catch it, and then it's Nate Biddle doubling, and it's like, what are you gonna do? You gotta kick it out to Omar Ballo for three. And so like I need less of that. You know, like I know this has been a talking point all year, but or like what you said, if they do, like put them on opposite blocks and see if you can get some good interior passing going, especially with Ballo. I think Ballo is a very underrated passer. So I'm very interested to kind of see how they do that. My other thing from the last game, Luke Goody, Miles Rice, and Mbako combined to shoot 5 of 23 from the floor. We need a little more from them, right?
Absolutely. And that's what I was referring to when I first hopped on your show. The biggest thing is it's do or die now. Say what you want about Woodson, returning, future coaches, this team, the systems, playing two bigs at the same time. Kick that out the door today, Indiana fans. That's what I really want to stress, because it's like this is do or die. Win this game, and you definitely have some breathing room, at least for now, in the NCAA tournament. Go take it to Michigan State, but take it one day at a time and know that this team was once, a top 15 projected team in the country. Why? Because they have the talent. I know it's not very easy to watch and see them go 6-7 minutes without scoring, but Miles Rice was the best freshman scorer in the Pac-12 last year. Umar Ballo was the best transfer in the country coming out of last year. Mackenzie Mbako came to Indiana as a projected top 15 lottery pick as a pure dynamic scorer. So the scorers have to score, and I've been saying that all season long. The bigs can bang, they can get their buckets, they can be presence on the interior, but when it's all said and done against a really good team in these tight games, your guards have to make plays with the ball in their hand down the stretch, whether that's Rice, it was Galloway against Ohio State. It's really been Galloway of this run where they've won the last couple few. But nonetheless, I just am demanding that Miles Rice plays big today and demanding that Mackenzie Mbako shows up today. And if the first 3 shots don't fall, then get back and earn it on the defensive end, because sometimes this team, especially with Rice and Mbako, they strictly play defense when they are scoring. And when they're not, that's when those big runs get out of hand. And you can't give up a run to a team like Oregon who can really guard and is efficient from the field.
Mbako, no doubt. I feel like Miles Rice has been better these past few weeks in terms of his effort on the defensive end. But I do want to talk about Trey Galloway, because he's been so much better here as of late. He's really they've won 4 of their last 5, and Trey Galloway's played his best basketball of the year these last 2.5 weeks or so. Why do you think he's been better?
Well, when Trey Galloway committed to a college, it was a kind of a weird archetype, like a 6'6", lengthy, good passer, not a freak athlete. We know he can dunk, but he's athletic from a body and build perspective. And he's a really dynamic 2-guard, especially when he shoots the 3 like he's done it of late. But with the absence of Rice protecting the ball towards the middle of the season on a losing streak, they've asked Trey Galloway to become a point guard. And I think Indiana fans have experienced the growing pains of a graduate senior playing in his last season and trying to learn a full new position. Yes, we've seen Trey bring the ball up, but he's bringing the ball up 30 minutes a game. And let's be honest, Jonathan, over this winning streak, when Trey Galloway goes, Indiana goes. So he's really blossoming in a role that I don't think he expected to do, especially when you pay $750,000 to what was supposed to be his point guard sidekick in Rice. But he's done a heck of a job. And this is a kid who's an Indiana kid. He's been through a lot from a mental perspective, from scrutiny from this fan base. And I think we owe him a lot today. And he's played his brains out when Indiana's had the back against the wall. So if you ask me what that's led to, I think that's what he's all about. He's a grinder. He's a hard worker. He's a team player. And he's going to do anything to win. But the shooting as of late, that's just clutch. And Trey Galloway, we need you a couple more games to make the NCAA tournament.
He got booed this year. It was like 2 months ago. Like, people at Assembly Hall were booing him. Now it's like, Trey Galloway, we really need you to show up today. I think it's right, because you're right. Like, he's been through a lot. There's been some growing pains with him playing, more that lead guard spot. But he's done a really good job. His assist numbers are up. He's scoring the ball more. He just looks more confident whenever he's shooting the ball, and it's been great. Do you think Indiana wins today?
I do, and I don't say that biased. When they went to Eugene and they were 7-point underdogs in that game, I was going to say this would be a steal, and they were in one down the stretch. And if they stole that game, how firmly this team would be in the tournament, it would be very nice. But the spread is now 2 today. I think there's going to be a good home crowd for a noon weekday game. And let's be real, this is Luke Goody, this is Anthony Leal, this is Trey Galloway. These are Indiana kids in potentially one of their last college basketball games, and they're playing for the jersey, they're playing for the state. And you kind of parlay that with the dynamic scoring trio of M'Baku, Renew, and Balu. You can throw in Rice if he wants to show up and have a day today. But this Indiana team is deep, and that's hard to say for a team who's on the tournament bubble. But if they were to sneak in, or even speaking in the Big Ten tournament, you can beat an Oregon team just playing team basketball. Then go have Galloway have a monster day and go for 25 with a Balu double-double. And next thing you know, you beat Michigan State 2 times in a row. I'm just saying, compared to most teams sitting on the bubble, they just want to make the tournament. I think everyone's firmly in that's looking at potentially playing an 11 seed. I would not want to play this Indiana team because defense travels. Mike Woodson loves defense, and they have the scorers. It's just time for these guys to elevate and start consistently scoring. And that's going to be the difference maker for the rest of the season. And it starts today at noon.
Yeah, and that's really been the thing all season, joined by Luke Brennaman, IU student reporter, also co-host of the Dialed In podcast for Chatterbox Sports. That's been the thing all year. They've needed really their non-bigs, because I feel like Renew and Balo, that one of those guys is going to score at least a little bit. They've needed Galloway and Miles Rice and Mackenzie M'Baku to start scoring, and we've seen that from Galloway. Miles Rice has been a little better as of late as well. And if this continues, I'm with you. I don't think anyone really wants to play against these guys with how they're defending and how they're not I feel like this Indiana team early in the year went from not doing all of the little things to now it's they're rebounding well. They're taking better shots. The offense just looks a little more crisp. They're, Galloway is really kind of leading the charge, and they're not turning the ball over. And it's amazing. If you take good shots, if you don't turn it over, and if you rebound, then all of a sudden you're probably going to start winning more games. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of credit to Mike Woodson. He's kept the locker room, whether he won it back or has kept it the whole time. You've seen it post games. If you're watching these games on TV, the guys hang around for him. They tap him on the head after. They have fun with him. And Woody's all about the fundamentals. Indiana fans know that. So this team, the fact that they started the year, got their way inside the top 20 in the AP poll, and I thought they were trying to play like a national championship contender too much. They tried to play so fast. Remember when it was a designed offensive set for Rice to just sprint the ball up the court, right off a mid basket and throw a lob rainbow pass inside. It was almost like NBA style. And it's funny how now that we've all settled down, they found their rotation, they found their guys, they're playing some of the most slow, fundamental, sit down and guard you, and then we'll worry about offense type of basketball right now. And the most ironic part about the whole thing is that's what's worked best. So go guard today. I don't think that'll be a problem. Let's be honest, this is a 9 a.m. game for Oregon. The spread is 2. We're underdogs. But I think Indiana has a lot more going for them in this matchup than they have had all year, especially against quad one opponents. And this is a very beatable team. So when it comes to Woodson, the fundamentals, make your free throws, guard without fouling, and play deep into the second half. And I think this home crowd can really push the Hoosiers over the edge today.
Last question for you, Luke, and I will let you go. I know you need to get on the road and get up here. Who wins the Big Ten tournament as a whole?
This is an interesting take, but a lot of people aren't talking about it. I have the UCLA Bruins. I think it's always kind of interesting to look at the path that teams have, and they're sitting with the bye right now. They're not playing in this round that Indiana is kicking off today in the second round on Thursday. But this could be a team that Indiana potentially plays if they can win this one and then beat Michigan State. I just think what I saw out of Mick Cronin's team in their last game of the year at home against USC, it was a dominant win. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that beating USC means anything. Indiana beat USC. But the team that was on display in California that night, I was like, whoa, look out, because that UCLA team was very similar to the Indiana team. A lot of recruits, extremely athletic, a lot of scorers, especially in the guard spot. And I heard Andy Katz say it on the Big Ten Network yesterday. He said if UCLA has officially hit their stride like they looked like they did on senior night against USC, then he says he thinks they're going to win the Big Ten tournament. And the odds makers don't hate him at all either. They're all the way down to 6-1, which some look at and almost vomit because it's not very good value for a team that, you're talking about the Michigan States of the world, Michigans, et cetera, everyone else. But I think UCLA is going to come to play, and a couple wins for them would especially help their seeding and resume.
It would. I don't mind it. You're picking future Indiana basketball coach Mick Cronin to win the tournament. So I think it's great. I don't mind it.
I would love that.
I like Wisconsin just because I think they score it better than anyone else in the tournament. And Dan and I, we talked about this a bit yesterday. Every team in college basketball can play in like the 60s or low 70s, but not everyone can play in the 80s. And Wisconsin kind of tends to play in the 80s. So I just kind of expect them to outscore everyone. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah, and they might have the best scorer in the Big Ten with that Tanji kid.
He's so good.
It's kind of that just level of college basketball now where I think people are realizing you can't just show up and play defense every night. You have to show up and play defense, and then you have to have guys that can go get a basket. And Wisconsin can really do it at every level. But this is a heck of a week. I look forward to it. And, hey, Indiana fans, let's take it one game at a time, and it starts in about an hour and a half because this is a huge one. And if Woody can make the tournament, you win this game kind of whatever. If they lose to Michigan State, they can't beat them 2 times in a row, so be it. But like I said, I know you agree with me and some others do too. This is an Indiana team I would not want to see.
Totally agree. Luke, thanks for your time, man. You were great as always.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You got it. You too. That is Luke Brennaman. You can check him out on Twitter at BrennyPXP. Does a really good job covering IU football. Also the co-host of the Dialed In podcast over at Chatterbox Sports. He does a great job. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Purdue plays USC tonight. I like Purdue big. I mean, the line's 9.5. I might bump it up to like 12.5. I'll tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
If it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Big thanks to Luke Brennaman for joining me in that last segment to continue talking IU and Oregon. Indiana, not the only college basketball team in the state playing. Of course, Purdue, they got the nightcap tonight against USC. And they're going to cruise. They're going to beat USC so easily. I mean, like, this game's not going to be close. Not close at all. They're going to beat the dog out of USC. Purdue's only favored by 9.5. I think that number is way too low. USC, a bad USC team is coming off of a double overtime game that they played last night. USC is going to be worn out. Purdue's going to be fresh because obviously Purdue didn't play yesterday. And I think they're going to run them up and down the court, and USC is just going to run out of gas at some point during this game. The other reason why I feel so good about Purdue minus 9.5 is because they played USC a month ago. And that game wasn't close either. They beat USC 90-72. They were up by as many as 26 at one point in the second half. Okay, like they crushed them. And it wasn't because they shot like the lights out in that game either. Because sometimes that happens when you're a good team like Purdue. You'll have a night where you shoot 40% from three and you just can't really miss, and you'll win and you'll put up 90 points because of that. That is not what happened in that game. Purdue shot 6 of 26 from three. That's only 23%. That's not very good. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer combined to be 2 of 11 from three. I'm willing to bet that won't happen again tonight. I'd be very surprised if it did. Purdue won that game because USC had no answer for Trey Kaufman-Renn, which isn't like a knock on USC because no one has an answer for Trey Kaufman-Renn, it seems. He had 24 points and 10 rebounds on 8 of 12 shooting, took 9 free throws, made 8 of them. And I don't think that USC is just magically going to have an answer all of a sudden for Trey Kaufman-Renn. Now, to USC's credit, I guess, they held Braden Smith to 9 points in that game that happened, about a month and a half ago. That probably won't happen again either. I highly doubt that USC is going to hold Braden Smith to 9 points again. I highly doubt that USC is going to hold Purdue to 6 of 26 shooting from three. And I'm definitely going to bet that Trey Kaufman-Renn has his way with this USC team once again. And I say that not only in part because of the way that he dominated USC when they played him earlier in the year. I also say that because Trey Kaufman-Renn just kind of had his way with everyone this year. USC simply doesn't have the talent to beat Purdue. And they're coming off a night where they played this intense double overtime game against Rutgers. So this has Purdue blowout written all over it. Purdue minus 9.5. It's my favorite bet of the day. It probably means that it'll lose. So, do with that information what you will. That game is going to be late tonight. As I said, it's the final game of the evening. Indiana and Oregon, they kick it off. Wisconsin plays Northwestern right after. That game should be a blowout. And then Illinois and Iowa starts the evening games. And then Purdue and USC will play 25 minutes after that game. So I don't think either one of those games between, like, Wisconsin should blow out Northwestern. Illinois should beat Iowa. But don't let Iowa get hot. Those guys can shoot it. Also, big loss by Ohio State last night for Indiana. One less team you have to worry about, in the bubble. And since this, Purdue USC game is going to be so late, like, I'm probably going to be eating dessert during the game because I love dessert. It's my favorite part of dinner. I eat dinner and I just do it so I can have dessert. I'm not really picky. I'll eat pie, ice cream, cookies, brownies, whatever dessert you have, sign me up. Okay? Like, you can always sign me up for a little bit of dessert, and that's why I'm still sitting at 180 pounds despite really wanting to lose a little bit of weight, you know? And another thing, because I feel like I've talked about losing weight for, the whole year I've been on the air. The other thing that makes losing weight for me kind of tough is I don't like vegetables. Can't stand them. Green beans, don't want them. Can't stand them. I do like, what are those little things called? I forget. Anyway, green beans, not a fan. Salad, not really a fan. A lot of them, I'm good. I would rather have, meat and potatoes. Like, that's just kind of how it is. My mom used to have to sneak vegetables into food to get me to eat them growing up, but that's neither here nor there. Long story short, vegetables suck, and I never want to eat them, but they are important if you want a nice, healthy, balanced diet. And when I look at the Colts offseason, Jadarius Ward and Cam Bynum signings, those two signings kind of feel like dessert. They were sweet. The news came out. There was excitement, oh man, the Colts have good players in their secondary. It was for me, it was the same level of excitement when my wife's like, Jonathan, do you want to go to Chick-fil-A and get milkshakes? Just absolutely I do. That sounds wonderful. Yesterday and late into the evening, the Colts made two signings that I would not identify as dessert. They signed running back Khalil Herbert, and they signed nose tackle Neville Gallimore. And I say those names, and you're kind of like, who? What? Those signings, to me, those are vegetable signings. They're boring. The news comes out, and you're like, yeah, cool. That's fine. No one's overjoyed that the Colts signed a backup running back and a backup nose tackle. But those signings are very important for the Indianapolis Colts, just like how eating your vegetables is incredibly important. Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson last year simply were not cutting it. They were bad backup running backs. The Colts didn't trust them to hold, to have the football. They combined for less than 100 carries last year. And Jonathan Taylor missed 3 games. There was a game where Jonathan Taylor took every single carry. That doesn't happen in the NFL anymore. Multiple running backs. Every team does it. Even the Eagles, Saquon Barkley, they cut up some of his carries. They didn't make him carry the football, 32 times a game. They didn't. They made sure that other people were carrying the football to lessen hits, because, it keeps your main running back fresh for the fourth quarter and it lengthens their career in theory. And the Colts just didn't have the depth at running back to do that last year. And you have to have that. When you look at the Neville Gallimore signing, they let go of Raekwon Davis. They needed a backup nose tackle. Neville Gallimore did a good job for the Rams these past couple of years. Okay, he's a good depth piece. Not fun, not flashy. Vegetables. These signings are not fun, but you have to have them. You have to. And when you look at that running back room now, the Colts now have a legitimate backup running back. They do. That is what Khalil Herbert is. He's a legitimate backup running back. That's really what he's been through his entire career. And he's never been the main guy. He backed up, DeAndre Swift when he was in Chicago last year. And, they traded him to the Bengals where he was the backup for Zach Moss and Chase Brown, running back that the Bengals took in the 5th or 6th round. So sure, he's never been the main guy, but he's been productive as a backup running back through the first 4 years of his career. Okay, he's averaging, about 4.8 yards per carry. That's a pretty good clip. If you're averaging, 0.2 less than 5 yards per carry, then you're a good running back. You find holes and you run through them, because that's what playing running back really is. Okay, so the Colts now have a reliable option, a guy who can, carry the football 4 or 5 times a game. And yeah, so good, solid backup running back for the Colts. Also a good, solid backup nose tackle as well, bringing in Neville Gallimore. The only thing about The only thing about Khalil Herbert that I'm concerned isn't the right word. The only thing that I guess I'm interested to see is the Colts did like using Tyler Goodson as like this third down scat back who can catch the ball out of the backfield and do those things. Khalil Herbert's never really done that. Okay. But then again, like he's never really had the opportunity to do it either. You know, he's only caught 75% or he's caught 75% of his targets throughout his career, which is like, that's a solid number. But, you know, it's like I don't know if he's like a screen guy or anything like that. So I believe Tyler Goodson's still under contract. So maybe that's why that's what they're going to hold on to him for, kind of let him do those things. But, you know, like this is a good signing by the Colts. They needed to address running back depth. When they let go of Raekwon Davis, they needed to address nose tackle depth. They did both of those things. Chris Ballard continues to have a good offseason. Is it great? I don't think it's great. I think it's really good, though. Once again, I don't like how they spent all that money on Danny Dimes, but hey, you know, it's whatever. C. Fitch chiming in over on X, saying that Dairy Queen blizzards are my weakness. Royal cheesecake to be exact. That sounds awesome. I haven't had a blizzard in forever. So my wife is she likes to eat a little healthier than I do. And so yeah, like whenever we go out, she also loves Chick-fil-A. She's like, we're big Chick-fil-A milkshake people, or we'll go to Culver's and get their frozen custard. That stuff's really good too. So I'm just a big chocolate guy. Like if it's got chocolate in it, sign me up. I'm down. Let's go. Even though, to be fair, C. Fitch, I'm a pretty big cheesecake guy as well. So I may have to go get a blizzard on my own and get that little cheesecake, whatever you called it, blizzard thing. That sounds fantastic. Speaking of fantastic, Indiana playing against Oregon today. That game coming up here in about an hour. You can hear the Dan Dockett Show scream about that game the entire time it's on, because the Dan Dockett Show, it's running today from noon to 3. And that Indiana game is going to be on from probably like noon to 2:15 or whatever it ends up being. So make sure you're tuned into the Dan Dockett Show today from noon to 3 to get his live reaction to everything going on in that game. When we come back at 11 o'clock, I've got some more Colts stuff. You know, I was sitting around last night thinking about the Colts and Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones and how was that going to impact Anthony Richardson. And then it kind of led into me thinking about everybody. And then boom, a segment was born. Most likely, least likely. That new segment is coming your way at 11 o'clock.
do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice week. College basketball in full effect right now. Indiana playing Oregon coming up here in about an hour. Going to continue talking Indianapolis Colts, though. Oh, man. So last night, I'm sitting at home, and I'm thinking about the Colts, and I'm thinking about just the idea of, like, how much better could Anthony Richardson have gotten. And I was like, I think he's going to come back. He's going to be a little bit better, but I don't expect him to be great. Like, I think it's more likely for Laiatu to come back better and all that kind of stuff. And then a segment was born. Most likely to, least likely to, Colts edition. We're going to start with the player that I think is most likely to come back a much improved player from last year. And it's Laiatu. Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, the players that improve the most from year to year are rookies going into their second season. Laiatu loves football. This dude eats, breathes, and sleeps football. Like that is his thing. Okay, that's a large part of why the Indianapolis Colts drafted him, and a large part of why they liked him. Okay, and here he is before the draft last year talking about how much he loves playing football.
Well, really, you're just going to be getting somebody that's going to be in the building all the time, consistently getting better, taking care of my body, but also, I'm making sure I'm getting in extra work. I'm trying to learn the game more than I have right now. I can always get better in the film room, studying tips and tendencies, stuff like that, with a tackle, how you drop and stuff like that. But, they're going to get somebody that's just obsessed with the game, and especially somebody that got it taken away and, I want to be the best at this game for real.
Laiatu right there talking about how he wants to be the best at this game for real, which I like. I like it when players say things like that. When it comes to Laiatu, I actually believe him. I genuinely believe this guy when he says that he loves football. I think he's being honest. I think you have to really love football when you have a neck injury and you're looking for second opinions so that you can play again. Because that's ultimately what happened. He played at Washington. He did something to his neck, and Washington was like, you can never play football again. And he was like, watch this. And he called UCLA. He was like, hey, cannot play football again. This is what happened to my neck. If you don't know, UCLA, I guess, has an amazing sports medicine program. And they're like, yeah, you can keep playing. You just have to do all of these exercises. And he was like, bet. So he transferred to UCLA so he could just continue to play football. And he kind of reminds me of, have you ever met someone who has this life, this really close life or death moment, like someone who almost dies in a car accident, and then a week later they're just a completely different person in a good way, and it's because they almost died? I think Laiatu's neck injury has had a similar effect on him because he's right. He was almost not allowed to play football anymore. And, when you're close to losing something that you really enjoy, I think it makes you cherish it a little bit more. It makes you work a little bit harder. And he's one of the few guys in this Colts locker room that when he says something, I actually believe him. He hasn't been corrupted quite yet by Chris Ballard and the Indianapolis Colts, media ways. And the other thing, a large part of why I think he's going to be better this next year, it's he wasn't bad this last year. They say, oh, well, Jonathan, he only had 4 sacks. What do you mean? He barely played half of the snaps for this Indianapolis Colts defense last year, and he was still impactful despite that. He led the Colts in pressures with 23. He was second on the Colts in quarterback knockdowns, and he was first in hurries. Okay, he was around the quarterback a pretty decent amount considering the limited snaps that he played. He just couldn't quite finish the play. And hopefully after a full off season, hopefully he comes back quicker, stronger. Hopefully he'll take time to watch film and figure out a way to cut off that, 0.2 of a second that he needs to log more sacks. I think he comes back a much better player. I don't think he's a 13.5 sack guy. I don't think he's quite that, but Can he flirt with double digits? Can he get to 9.5 sacks on the year? Sure, let's go. That sounds great to me. So I expect for Laiatu Latu to come back a much improved football player. The least likely player to get better is Jonathan Taylor. Running back production tends to start to decline from the ages of 26 to 31, and Jonathan Taylor is 26. And he's going to be he just turned 26. So he's in that window now. He's still going to be good, but I don't expect him to come back faster, stronger, or better at anything that would make him a better running back. Which leads me into this thing that I've mentioned a couple times on here. This is the time to trade Jonathan Taylor. The Colts won't, because he's their best player on offense. He's one of the 5 best running backs in the NFL. He's a player who's who will have fans buy his jersey, and they'll show up to Lucas Oil on Sundays just to watch him play, and they can hang that big, mural thing of him outside the stadium and use him to kind of push season ticket sales. If this was a franchise about winning, though, they would look to move him and get a second-round pick for him. The player that I think is most likely to have gotten worse is Samson Ebukam. He's going to be 30 years old this year, coming off of an Achilles tear. Not expecting him to put up 9.5 sacks like he did 2 years ago. By the way, that was an outlier season. In Samson Ebukam's first 6 years in the NFL, he'd never had a season with 5 sacks or more. He had a career year 2 years ago, and I don't expect him to be that good again at the age of 30, coming off of an Achilles tear. And when you consider the fact that he wasn't dominant any other year of his career except for that 1 2 years ago, I don't know how you can expect for him to have that same production. I think he regresses quite a bit to being like a 4.5, 5 sack guy. And then everyone's really disappointed. They're like, why isn't Samson Ebukam playing better? It's like, oh, I don't know. Maybe because he's 30 years old, coming off of an Achilles injury. Okay. This is yet another reason why the Colts need to make sure that they bring in another edge rusher for depth. Because I don't think, Samson Ebukam is going to be as good as he was. Iowa Dangbo's out the door. So they need to invest in a little bit more defensive line depth, especially at edge rusher. Okay, they did a really good job shoring up, that nose tackle position by bringing in Neville Gallimore to be Grover Stewart's backup. Okay, now edge rusher. Let's go. The player that I think is the least likely to have gotten worse is Anthony Richardson. He's not going to come back worse. I would be very surprised if he did for 2 reasons. First, he has competition in camp this year, according to the team. His rookie year and last year, he waltzed into training camp, 6'4", 240 pounds, throwing down dunks on his way in. And he waltzed into camp as the unquestioned starter. That's not the case this year. Do I think this is a real quarterback competition? Absolutely not. But I don't have to think it is. Anthony Richardson has to. As long as Anthony Richardson thinks this is a real quarterback competition, good for the Colts. That was the goal of this whole thing, and I think he does. Because he knows that he wasn't very good last year. And he knows that if he doesn't play better this year, he will get benched again. He knows that if he doesn't produce this year, that big, fat quarterback extension, like 5 years, $300 million, because that's what these quarterback extensions are starting to look like. He knows that that's not going to be there for him if he doesn't start to produce. Okay, so he's not just playing to be the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts this year. He's playing for his NFL career earnings. If he's great this year, then the Colts will probably pay him. And not some lowly, $40 million a year, which I say that and you're like, lowly. Compared to other quarterback contracts, yes, $40 million, not a ton of money. when you factor in the fact that guys like Tua and Trevor Lawrence are making $55 million a year, and I think Dak Prescott's at $60 million now, and Josh Allen, I think, is also at $60 million a year now. So, yes, like that. Think that kind of money for Anthony Richardson if he shows up and if he plays great this year, right? Because if he's great this year, then the Colts will pay him because that's what they do. They also so desperately, the Colts, so desperately want to have a franchise quarterback again. It's only been 6 years since Andrew Luck retired, and it has not been pretty since he left. The point is, he's not coming back worse because he has a ton to play for. The second reason why he's not coming back worse, it's kind of hard to be worse than a 48% completion percentage. He's not. I don't think he's going to be worse than that. Okay, now sure, he may not come back better, but he's definitely not coming back worse. I'd be very surprised if he did. The last thing that we're handing out here in terms of most likely to and least likely to. The most likely player to be the leap guy, Adonai Mitchell. This is the candidate to be labeled as this guy's going to take a leap this year. It's Adonai Mitchell. It has to be. Adonai Mitchell, AD Mitchell to some, checks every single box to be labeled as the media as this guy is going to take a leap guy. First, he's young. Okay, the young players are always the ones projected to take a leap. More specifically, he's going from his first year into his second year, which is, I think, the most common time for us to see leap guys. He was also terrible last year. Didn't play nearly as much as what I think everyone else thought that he was going to. And that's the thing with these leap guys. It's always someone who was bad the year prior. Anthony Richardson was the national media, this guy's going to take a leap this year guy, because 2 years ago he was awful. Seriously, that's just the very simple reality of it. And Adonai Mitchell is also crazy athletic. The leap guy is always crazy athletic. And the storyline is always the same. Okay, you're going to someone write or say something kind of like this. It'll be, this young player who's incredibly gifted had a whole offseason to evaluate their play and fix their issues. With a full season under their belts, I think we'll see him take a leap and be that player we all expected him to be when he got drafted. That is how it's always pitched. Now listen to it for Adonai Mitchell. Okay, you ready? Adonai Mitchell is incredibly young, came out of Texas early, didn't play as much as everyone kind of expected him to his first year in Indianapolis. He just didn't really understand some things. Now with a full season under his belt, a full offseason, to get stronger and work on his craft, I think that we'll see him take the leap and be the player that we all expected him to be, because he runs a 4.3 and he's like 6'2". And, they were raving about him at training camp last year. I think this is the year we see it translate to the regular season. I mean, come on. The Indy Star should hire me right now. Seriously, that's how it's pitched every year. And AD Mitchell fits every part of that pitch. A second-round pick that some people thought was going to go in the first round. He's highly talented, and he's incredibly young. And there's a ton of room for him to grow. So Adonai Mitchell is your Colts player most likely to be labeled as the leap guy. The guy who is most likely, or going to be labeled, most likely to take a leap. Will it happen for him? I hope so, because the Colts need more good wide receivers. Seriously, they really need that. Will it happen? Once again, I don't know. We'll wait and we will see. I hope he does, because I want the Colts to be good. And if, Adonai Mitchell comes back and he's a legitimate X wide receiver, then fantastic. I like the idea of throwing to Adonai Mitchell and if AD Mitchell comes back a legitimate receiver, then this Colts receiver room's good. You got three receivers last year who had 800 yards receiving, which is pretty good between Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, and Alec Pierce. All three of those guys are back. And then you've got Adonai Mitchell. If he comes back and he's playing really, really well, then let's go. Like, that's 4 good wide receivers. So hopefully Adonai Mitchell does take that leap after being labeled the leap guy for this year. And hopefully Indiana beats Oregon. They are playing coming up here in about 45 minutes. We're really not that far away from it. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, my thoughts on Indiana and how they're going to beat Oregon today.
it may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Hopefully you guys are having a nice day, nice week. Hopefully you are off work today, driving to Gainbridge Fieldhouse to watch the Indiana Hoosiers take on Oregon here in about 40 minutes. 40 minutes till tip, which is going to be absolutely electric. Indiana lost to Oregon about a week ago, right? They lose 73-64. The game was on the road in Oregon. Not an easy place to play. And there were two big storylines coming out of that game. The one that was commented on the most, though, by Coach Woodson was how large the free throw discrepancy was. Oregon took 21 free throws to Indiana's 7, which didn't really feel right during the game because I thought both teams did an excellent job of attacking the rim, and Indiana just didn't get calls for some reason. It was so bad that the usually phlegmatic Mike Woodson got a little fired up after the game.
I mean, we had our chances, but listen, guys, in a physical game like this, it can't be 21-7. You gotta be kidding me. 21-7 on free throws. It's bull. It just can't be not in a physical game. They're a physical team, and it can't be that lopsided. It's impossible.
Did you think that was mostly with Ballo and Renew inside, or?
No, I'm just saying it can't be 21-7.
What was the ref's message to you?
Well, again, it's what it is. I can't go back and get it. Right. But in a physical game like that, where both teams are battling their asses off, you can't punish one team and put one team at the line for 21 times and the other team only get there 7 times. That's all.
Mike Woodson fired up after that last game against Oregon, and that was part of the game. Indiana got beat up, and they didn't get rewarded for it. Okay, they went to the rim repeatedly. Didn't matter. And I don't expect for the difference in free throws in this game to be 21-7 again. The game was recent enough that the way that it was called, Mike Woodson complaining after, I think will have an impact on the game. Because you know that they sent clips in. Like, hey, like this was a foul. This was a foul. You didn't call it. I wouldn't be surprised if Indiana got a friendlier whistle than Oregon did early in the game. Just because I do think things like that, coaches complaining, I do think that they have an impact on referees, and complaining to the Big Ten, I think it has an impact. But that's not why Indiana lost that game. Indiana didn't lose that game because they took less free throws than Oregon. They lost because Oregon and Nate Biddle, man, defensively were just really good. Nate Biddle, the center for Oregon, just like sat in the paint and was amazing at contesting shots at the rim. He had 4 blocks. And he showed why he finished second in the Big Ten this year in blocks per game at 2.2. Indiana struggled to score in the paint. Okay, they had 32 paint points. They shot 14 of 34 in the paint. That's not good. That's 41%. Shooting 41% from inside the paint is a terrible number. It's a terrible number. Okay? And it happened to Indiana because this big Nate Biddle, Oregon kid that just looks like a big tree standing in the middle of the lane is a good rim protector. Okay? He had 4 of Oregon's 7 blocks, and he impacted every single shot. It was impressive. It's one of the better defensive games I've seen from a center in college basketball this year. Like, he was really, really good. And obviously, it had an impact on Indiana. It's why Malik Renew was so bad. 4 of 12 from the floor. He only scored 8 points. He played 27 minutes in that game. He should not play 27 minutes in the game today. Absolutely should not. Okay? Omar Ballo should be the main big on the floor for Indiana in this game because he was good against Nate Biddle last week. Okay, he was 5 of 7 from the floor for 10 points. He had 12 rebounds. That's impressive. Like that's a good game. And the fact that he only got to take 7 shots feels wrong. And it makes sense that Ballo was better against Biddle. That is, say that 3 times fast. Ballo bigger Biddle, like it's a lot. Anyway, like Ballo's just bigger, so Nate Biddle's size just isn't as impactful on him as it is on Malik Reneau, who's 6'9". You know, when you're 6'9", trying to post up a dude that's 7'1" and disciplined and doesn't really leave his feet, you're going to struggle to score. Okay, so I'm going to be interested to see how much Malik Reneau plays today. If he doesn't have it going, then Mike Woodson has to pull him and play Omar Ballo a little more. I'm not even opposed to the idea of having Omar Ballo mirror Nate Biddle's minutes, because Nate Biddle is not just this like big, tall, block shots guy. Like that's not what he is. Like, he had 37 the other night against Washington. Dude can score too, and I like the idea of having a little bit more size on him. And Omar Ballo, solid defender this year, has protected the rim well. Okay, so I would play Ballo more than Malik Reneau. I'll be interested to see how Malik Reneau does play, because you know that Mike Woodson's not going to listen to me. So if he does play today, hopefully he's got it going. If he doesn't, though, Mike Woodson's got to pull him and play Omar Ballo a little bit more. To be fair to Malik Reneau, his struggles weren't the reason why Indiana lost either. He wasn't the only guy that struggled to score offensively. Indiana only had 2 players in double figures in that game against Oregon last week. Omar Ballo finished with 10. Trey Galloway finished with 16. No one else shot the ball well. Miles Rice was 1 of 7 from the floor. Mackenzie Mbako, 2 of 10 from the floor. Luke Goody, 2 of 6 from the floor. That's 5 of 23 from players that like played a decent amount of minutes for Indiana. 3 players that Indiana expects to put the ball in the bucket. Those guys, along with Malik Reneau, have to step up, and they have to be better. No way around it. Because their defense last week was more than good enough for them to win. I thought they played a good defensive game against Oregon. Now, they have to defend without fouling a little bit better, because Oregon scored 18 of their 73 points from the free throw line. So they need to clean that up. And if they do, then they'll play great on the defensive end. Okay, they defended the 3 well last time against Oregon. Oregon only shot 24% from 3 in that game. Last week. They only shot 39% from the floor. Like that is a good defensive game from Indiana. The issue was they just couldn't score. They just couldn't score enough, which is kind of a weird thing to say about Indiana and the way that they've played here as of late. Like I said, they've won 4 out of their last 5 games. Offense hasn't really been the issue. The defense has been good. Okay, they hold Ohio State to 60. As I mentioned against Oregon, they hold them to 39% shooting from the floor. They hold Washington to 62. Penn State, the defense wasn't great, but I think that was more they turned the ball over too much, because when you turn the ball over and you give up fast break layups, like, you're going to give up more points. They held Purdue to 58. Like, the defense as of late has been much better. The problem has been the offense. That has been the problem really all year. The production from Malik Reneau and Omar Ballo has been pretty consistent. It has been. And the question has just been whether or not the guards were going to score. Trey Galloway, he's been scoring more and more here as of late, been setting up teammates to get buckets as well. He's played really well. And all of a sudden, Indiana started winning games. What guard is going to step up and help Indiana win this basketball game? Because Indiana has more than enough talent to beat Oregon today in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Okay, this is basically a home game for IU. I get that the game's at noon, but the crowd should be pro-Indiana. I don't Oregon, great football fan base, but I don't think that they're traveling to Indianapolis for the Big Ten tournament when their team's the 8 seed. If they're like the 1 seed, then sure, yeah. Let's travel, let's, book a hotel for the week, because chances are we're going to win a bunch of games. We can go to the other sessions, because you can buy tickets relatively cheap to the non-Indiana and non-Purdue sessions. So, but Oregon's not they're not going to win the tournament, even though I definitely think that they're going to. Anyway, Indiana should win this game. They opened as 2.5 point underdogs last night. They got down to 1.5. It went back up to 2.5 as of today. I think they get a little bit more scoring from their guards. I think Trey Galloway continues to play really well I think that Miles Rice doesn't shoot 1 of 7 from the floor. I think Mackenzie Mbako doesn't shoot 2 of 10 from the floor. So I think they get a little more production from those guys. Malik Reneau and Omar Ballo continue to be consistent. Hopefully, we get more Omar Ballo minutes, less Malik Reneau minutes, because matchup-wise, it just seems like Omar Ballo has a better time defending and scoring on Nate Biddle than Malik Reneau did in that game a week ago. With that being said, you go back, you watch film, you figure out where you could have been better, and then you just kind of figure it out from there. So give me Indiana. I think they win today, and I think that they cover. Purdue, they're playing USC. I think they're going to absolutely cruise. I don't think this game is going to be close. They're going to beat the dog out of USC. Purdue's only favored by 9.5 last time I checked, which was, 30 minutes ago. And it doesn't make any sense to me. They're playing a bad USC team coming off of a night where they played a very intense double overtime game. USC is going to be worn out. Purdue, meanwhile, should be fresh. They also played USC a month ago and just ran them out of the building. They beat them 90-72. Purdue was up by as many points as 26 at one point during that game. And they didn't beat USC because they just shot the ball in incredibly well. Because sometimes that happens. Sometimes there's nights where Braden Smith, shoots like 12 of 17 from the floor, and Trey Coppin-Wren does the same thing, and Purdue as a team shoots like 48% from 3, and you look up and you gave up 90 points, and you're like, how did that happen? And it's like, oh, Purdue just shot the crap out of the basketball. That is not what happened in that game against USC. Purdue actually shot the ball pretty terribly. 6 of 26 from 3 in that game. It's 23%. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer were combined 2 of 11 from 3. That probably won't happen again today. They won that game because USC had no answer for Trey Coppin-Wren. No answer for him. He had 24 points, 10 rebounds on 8 of 12 shooting from the floor, and he was 8 of 9 from the free throw line. Braden's they just had no answer for him. And, congrats to USC, I guess, for keeping Braden Smith in check and holding him to 9 points. But if you don't stop Trey Coppin-Wren, you can still lose, very much so. And I just don't think USC is going to magically have an answer to defend Trey Coppin-Wren a month and a half later. Now, once again, to their credit, they did hold Braden Smith to 9 points. But let's be honest, that probably won't happen again either. Okay, Purdue didn't play at their normal level, and they still hung 90 up on USC. Because Braden Smith's not going to score 9 points again. He's going to score more than that. They aren't going to shoot 6 of 26 from 3 again. That's 23%. That is well below their season average. They're a high 30% 3-point shooting team. And as I said, Trey Coppin-Wren's going to have his way again. And I say that in part because of how dominant he was that first time around. But I also say it because Trey Coppin-Wren's just kind of had his way with everyone this year. That's just the simple reality of it. So sure, USC doesn't have the talent to beat Purdue, and they're coming off, USC doesn't have the talent to beat Purdue, and they're coming off a night where they played this intense double overtime game, and this has blowout written all over it. Purdue minus 9.5. That is my favorite bet of the day when we do the bet 365 pick of the day or whatever on Dan's show later today. That will undoubtedly be my pick, which means that it probably won't cash because that's just kind of the way that things have gone for me. But we'll see. I like Purdue minus 9.5. Hopefully it cashes when we come back. Here in a few minutes, we're going to wrap the show up with a little bit more Indianapolis Colts. Chris Ballard, he's been busy making these, free agent signings, trying to make sure that everything's in line so that the Colts can win the Super Bowl this next year, because that is probably what they're going to do. You can just go ahead and make that bet right now. Go ahead and put a whole bunch of money on the Indianapolis Colts winning the Super Bowl because that's what's going to happen. Probably not. But when we come back here in about 4 minutes, Chris Ballard made a couple below the radar moves that I think do need to be discussed, and we will discuss them when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, big thanks to Luke Brennaman for coming on the show earlier to talk Indiana and Oregon. I like Indiana. We are 20 minutes away from tip-off in that game. I can't wait. I'm jazzed up. I'm ready to go. Yeah. Indiana, basketball all day. I love this is the best time of year. Okay. I watched an amazing Thunder and Celtics game last night. Then, a little Rutgers USC double overtime action. Okay. College hoops during the day. My Arkansas Razorbacks pulled it out yesterday. Did they cover the spread? No. Do I care? Absolutely not. They're playing again today at 1:00, by the way. Anyway, so best time of the year. We got hoops on all day, all the time, 20 minutes away. Indiana plays Oregon, hoping to kind of put that final stamp on their NCAA tournament resume to earn that at-large bid. I think they win. I really hope that they win. They're only, a 2.5-point underdog, so I think this game is going to be nothing short of spectacular. Something else that's spectacular? Dessert. I freaking love dessert. It's my favorite part of dinner. You say Jonathan will like desserts after dinner. I know, but you got to run through dinner to get to dessert. I eat dinner, I finish, and then whatever dessert that you've got for me. I'm not picky. Pie, ice cream, cookies, cheesecake. I had a fried cheesecake the other day. Incredible. You can get that at Aspen Creek and Grill. Anyway, just cookies, whatever kind of dessert you got, sign me up for it. Sign me up for it, okay? And, I'm 180 pounds. I have been for a while, trying to lose 20 of that. And it's tough because I like dessert way too much. I do. The other thing that's made it kind of tough, though, I don't like vegetables. Can't stand them. I don't like green beans at all. I'll never forget when I was a child, my favorite basketball player growing up was Dirk Nowitzki. Got a signed jersey of his. It sits in a closet because it doesn't match my wife's aesthetic, which is a real bummer for me. And I'll never forget, I'm 7 years old, and my parents have made me this lovely dinner. My mom made green beans, and my parents look at me and they go, Jonathan, Dirk Nowitzki loves green beans. I said, oh, really? And I just ate them so fast. And they're like, Jonathan, we're just kidding. And then I was very upset. How dare they lie to me, a poor, gullible 7-year-old. Anyway, point is, vegetables suck. I do not like them. I never want to eat them. But they're important, though. Right? They give you this nice balance in your food diet, which you need to be healthy, and being healthy is important and all that good stuff. When I look at this offseason, the, Chadarius Ward and Cam Bynum signings that Chris Ballard made early, that's the dessert. Okay, that's, those signings happen. You're sweet, pun intended. Let's go. There's excitement. I'm looking forward to seeing how this Lou Anarumo secondary kind of works now with better players on the back end. There was excitement, the same level of excitement that I get when my wife is like, Jonathan, do you want to go get milkshakes after dinner? And the answer is always, absolutely, I do. And those signings are great. And they're obviously important because the Colts are going to be better because of it. It builds excitement, which is, I think a very important thing for this franchise that I think Colts fans have been kind of apathetic towards the Colts these past couple of years because it's just kind of been the same thing. And so when you make these dessert signings of Cam Bynum and Chadarius Ward, you generate excitement, which is important. But the Khalil Herbert and Neville Gallimore signings of yesterday, those are not dessert signings. Those signings are vegetables. They're boring. You're not leading ESPN with the Indianapolis Colts sign backup running back Khalil Herbert. You're not doing that. It's boring. No one's overjoyed, okay, that they signed a backup running back and a backup nose tackle. But those signings, like vegetables, are very important. You have to have those signings. They make your team better. They give you depth. You have to have them. Let's just look at Khalil Herbert. We can start with him. The Colts didn't have a backup running back last year. Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson did not gut it. They did not. Jonathan Taylor missed 3 games last year. And despite that, Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson didn't combine for 100 carries. There was a game where Jonathan Taylor took every carry. He finished the game with 32 touches. Crazy. That doesn't happen in the NFL anymore. Like that is not a thing. Multiple running backs is the way to go because there's a plethora of good running backs available. Okay, it keeps your main running back fresh for the fourth quarter. Helps kind of lengthen their career. They don't miss as many games because they're not taking as many hits, all those things. And the Colts didn't have the depth for that last year. Okay, this is a vegetable signing, bringing in Khalil Herbert. He gives them depth. He's never been the main running back, but he's been productive as a backup everywhere he's been. He backed up, like DeAndre Swift in Chicago, and he was, he got traded to the Bengals halfway through the year this last year, and was pretty solid there. He's been in the league for 4 years, going into his fifth. But he's never been the main running back, but he's been productive in the carries that he's gotten through the first 4 years of his career. He's averaging about 4.8 yards per carry. That's a really good clip. I get it. The sample size isn't huge because he's a backup, but he's been doing this for 4 years now. It's just under 5 yards a carry. I find that to be incredibly impressive. The only not even concerning thing, but the one thing about him that I'm not sure of, I don't even know if I like it or not yet. He's never been a catch the ball out of the backfield kind of guy. But, he's caught 75% of his targets. The issue is he just hasn't had very many targets. So when he's in the game, he's probably going to run the ball. I believe Tyler Goodson is still on the Colts roster. So he'll kind of be that third down, scat back, throw him a screen, hit him out in the flat, see if he can make someone miss, and then, watch him run because Tyler Goodson, to his credit, is very fast. Okay, so the Colts needed to address the depth at running back this offseason, and Chris Ballard did. After letting Raekwon Davis go, the big 6'8", 300 and something pound monstrosity of a human being that was the backup nose tackle for the Colts last year, they let him go. That leaves a hole on your roster, and the Colts go out and they sign this guy, Neville Gallimore, a guy who's been somewhat productive during his time in Los Angeles. Hopefully, he's able to come in here and continue to be a good backup because Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner, those are going to be the guys in the middle of that defense. But those are big dudes who aren't going to play every snap of every game on defense. So bringing in a guy like Neville Gallimore should help them kind of be able to play a little bit longer and do just a little bit more. So this isn't these are two more good signings from Chris Ballard. They're not fun. They're not exciting, but they're important things that needed to happen in order for the Colts to have a good NFL-looking roster going into the season. I'm looking forward to the draft. I think that this, decreases the likelihood of them taking a running back in the 5th or 6th round. They still might because there's a bunch of really good running backs in this draft. They're not going to have to worry about drafting a defensive tackle because they've got, like I said, they've got that backup nose tackle now. They can really focus on their needs, which is offensive guard. They need a tight end, and they need depth at edge rusher. They need depth at edge rusher. That is something that has to be addressed in the NFL draft. Those three things need to be addressed. Maybe, grab a little extra depth at safety. Oh, linebacker too. Linebacker also needs to be addressed. So I guess that there's 4 things that I'm looking at the Colts in terms of their draft. Linebacker, tight end, offensive guard, depth at edge rusher. Those are the 4 things that the Colts really need. I don't think they have enough money left to continue to kind of make investments and continue to spend money in this offseason. But I do think that with this draft coming up, they will be able to kind of help fill some of those needs. I still really want them to trade up with the Raiders, to that 6th pick so they can grab Tyler Warren because that dude's going to be a beast. Like a true two-way tight end. I get it. He's not Brock Bowers. He's not Kyle Pitts. But the thing about those guys is they don't block. That's the thing about Tyler Warren that makes him so much more interesting and part of why I would take him. I was just well, do you really want to take a blocking tight end with the 6th pick? When you're that athletic and you catch the ball the way that he did at Penn State, abso-freaking-lutely I do. Abso-freaking-lutely. So will that happen? Probably not. Probably won't happen. But, we'll have to wait and see Indiana playing Oregon here in about 10 minutes. I'm actually going to go ahead and change the channel in here. This is I love this studio because like there's 2 TVs, and yeah, like I'm going to watch hoops on these 2 TVs, and it's going to be absolutely wonderful. So that game coming up here in about 10 minutes. The Dan Dockett show starting here in about 10 minutes as well. I like Indiana. They are more than talented enough to win this game. Okay, like they are every bit as good. You could argue that they're better than Oregon. I'm very intrigued to see how they play today, because they should beat Oregon. Like they should. They're more talented. They should have beaten them in Eugene. But guy hits a 30-foot bomb as time's running out on the shot clock, and then you lose, because that's how all this stuff goes. So we'll see. I am expecting another big game from Trey Galloway, just because he just seems so much more in control. Like he doesn't seem sped up, plays at his own pace. That's a big word now in basketball circles. He plays at his own pace. So he's gotten a lot better at that. I'm hoping Malik Renew bounces back in a big way after really struggling against Nate Biddle and the Oregon interior defense last game. If I'm Indiana, I'm going to the rim hard early. I do think that they're going to get a slightly friendlier whistle than Oregon, given the free throw discrepancy in that first matchup between these 2 teams. So hopefully, Indiana is able to pull it out. Other news in the world of the NFL, still waiting on Aaron Rodgers to sign. Apparently, Minnesota is now in the mix. Apparently, the Steelers are still kind of waiting for him to kind of decide what he's going to do, and they're not really doing anything until that happens. So we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see kind of what Aaron Rodgers winds up doing. It's going to be good. It's going to be just an absolute blast. The Indiana Pacers, they're playing tomorrow night on the road against the 76ers, and then Saturday they're playing the Bucks again. So if you're more of an NBA person, I am too, but who doesn't love March? I mean, I'm watching Duquesne and St. Bonaventure play right now, and it's very distracting. I keep looking up, and anyway, that's what the entire time that Indiana game's on while Dan's on the air, like that's what the show's going to be. We're going to watch the Indiana game and do our best to talk to you while we do it. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to tune into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. If you haven't yet, head over to YouTube, search for Indy's Sports Ticket, and subscribe. The show is live there every day, Monday through Friday. Doing really good stuff. Hopefully you are enjoying it. I'm going to have a bunch of stuff tomorrow on Indiana basketball. Zach Gray is hopefully going to join the show. He's a professional sports gambler. College basketball is really kind of where he makes his money, and he's been doing pretty well here as of late. Obviously, with all these tournament games going on, he's got a lot of bets to give out, and he did a pretty good job last week, as he always does. So Zach Gray hopefully going to be on the show tomorrow. For the Dan Dockett Show, it's Seth Greenberg at 12:30. Mike Lewis, he'll be on at 1 again to kind of wrap up that Ball State season. And, of course, we'll be talking Indiana, Oregon the entire way. One more time for you. I'm taking Indiana. They are, a 2.5-point underdog. And, man, I like them today. I don't know why, but I think they win today. They punch that ticket into March Madness, into the NCAA tournament, and it's going to be, just a really good thing for them. I know that, Mike Woodson hasn't had the most memorable tenure here, but, I like it. I want guys to succeed. That's just really kind of the simplicity of it. I'd like for him to be sent out on at least a semi-good note, make the tournament, losing the first round, do all that kind of stuff. And then you say, hey, at least we made the tournament. And if they do, it'll be the first time in a decade that the Indiana Hoosiers have made the tournament 3 times in a 4-year span. So hopefully Indiana pulls it out. Purdue, they're playing USC tonight. They're a 9.5-point favorite. I like Purdue. USC, I think, is going to be gassed. And Purdue's just way better than USC. I don't know how this game isn't won by double digits for Purdue. It's going to be basically a home game for them as well. That's going to do it here here at the Real Jonathan Smith Show. The Dan Dockett Show is coming your way here in about 5 minutes.